I used to believe that change came slowly, that transformation was the result of years of work, trial and error, and small, gradual progress. But then something happened that shattered that belief entirely. I found myself in a room full of strangers, pulsing with energy, anticipation, and something I couldn't quite name. There was laughter, there were tears, and above all, there was a strange sense of permission. Permission to dream bigger, to think differently, to become more. I wasn't expecting it. I thought I was just attending another motivational event, something to pass the time and maybe learn a thing or two. What I got instead was a mirror held up to my soul. I was confronted not by anyone else, but by myself, my own doubts, my own excuses, the endless stories I had been telling myself about why I couldn't, why I shouldn't, and why it wasn't the right time. It was uncomfortable, it was raw, but somewhere in the middle of all that noise and emotion, I caught a glimpse of something I hadn't seen in a long time, my potential, real, unfiltered, and unapologetic. I realized that I had been living my life like a backup singer in my own story, waiting for some imaginary moment to give myself permission to shine. And in that instant, everything changed. What if transformation doesn't have to take years? What if the only thing standing between the life you have and the life you want is a decision, a radical, powerful decision to see yourself differently? That's what I discovered. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you feel it, you can't go back. This isn't about hype. It's about truth. And that truth might just wake something up inside you too. I've always believed in the power of personal growth, books, podcasts, advice from mentors. They all had their place in my journey. But somewhere along the way, I hit a wall. Not a physical one, but an invisible barrier within myself. No matter how much I tried to push forward, I kept circling the same struggles. Procrastination, self-doubt, fear of failure. It wasn't that I lacked ambition or knowledge. I had goals, I had plans, but something inside was quietly holding me back, like a silent agreement I didn't remember making. And I knew that unless I faced it head on, I'd never break free. I began searching not just for more information, but for transformation. I wasn't interested in adding another tip or trick to my toolbox. I needed something deeper, something that would reach the core of how I thought, felt, and acted. So I took a leap. I stepped into a high energy, immersive experience I hoped would challenge me, maybe even shake me up a little. What I didn't expect was to be completely dismantled in the best possible way. The moment I arrived, I could feel the shift. The energy was electric. Strangers looked each other in the eye with fierce intensity. People were dancing, shouting, crying, laughing. It was wild and at first a little overwhelming, but underneath all the noise was something powerful, raw humanity. People weren't pretending to have it all figured out. They were being real. And in that space, I started to lower my own defenses. As the experience unfolded, I was guided through powerful exercises that forced me to confront truths I had buried deep. Limiting beliefs I didn't even know I carried came to the surface. I realized how much I had been driven by fear of being judged, fear of failing, fear of not being enough. That fear had been disguised as realism or responsibility, but in reality, it was just a story I had been telling myself for years. And that story was no longer serving me. This wasn't about motivation or hype. It wasn't about learning how to hustle harder. It was about digging deep and asking myself the tough questions I had been avoiding, questions that cracked open the door to something new. Not a better version of me, but a more authentic one, a self that wasn't defined by limitations, but by possibility. That journey didn't just change how I saw the world, it changed how I saw myself. We live in a world overflowing with information. Self-help content is everywhere. Books promising success, podcasts offering the keys to happiness, videos showing us how to hack our minds. And yet so many people still feel stuck. They set goals, make vision boards, even follow morning routines, but deep down, nothing really shifts. They're still battling the same inner critic, the same fear of failure, the same nagging feeling that they're not living up to their full potential. The problem isn't a lack of resources. It's that transformation doesn't happen just by learning something new. It happens when we experience a breakthrough in how we think and believe. At the root of this struggle is the silent weight of limiting beliefs. These beliefs are not always obvious. They're quiet, sneaky, and often disguised as logic or practicality. I'm not good enough. I always mess things up. People like me don't succeed. These ideas don't scream at us. Instead, they whisper in the background, shaping our choices, behaviors, and even our identities without us realizing it. Over time, they become self-fulfilling. We start playing small, settling for less, and justifying why our dreams are out of reach. Most people don't even know these beliefs exist within them. They blame their lack of progress on external factors, lack of time, money, support, or opportunity. But in truth, the biggest obstacle is often internal. Until we shine a light on these unconscious thoughts, they continue to control us from the shadows. And no amount of strategy or planning can overcome a mindset that's working against itself. The challenge then is not just about setting bigger goals or working harder, it's about going deeper, digging into the roots of our mental programming and rewriting the beliefs that no longer serve us. That's not easy. It requires courage to face the truth about how we've been living and what we've been avoiding. It requires emotional honesty, vulnerability, and a willingness to let go of the familiar, even if the familiar is painful. But what makes this even more difficult is that these patterns often feel comfortable. They've been with us for years, sometimes since childhood. Letting them go can feel like losing a part of ourselves, but until we do, we remain trapped in cycles of self-sabotage, frustration, and disappointment. The real challenge isn't out there in the world, it's in here, inside the mind. And confronting that is the first real step toward freedom. Once we begin to recognize that the real barriers in our lives are internal, not external, a powerful shift begins to take place. We start asking deeper questions, not how do I become successful, but what has been holding me back from becoming who I truly am? That question alone can unlock a new path. It's not about collecting more information. It's about challenging the old patterns that have defined our thinking for years. True growth begins when we stop trying to improve the mask and start transforming the person underneath it. This exploration demands that we pay attention to our state, our emotional and physical energy in the moment. Every decision we make, every action we take is directly influenced by the state we are in. When we're in a state of fear, we retreat. When we're in a state of courage, we move forward. Most people live in reactive states without realizing they have the power to change them. But the truth is, state is not something we are stuck in. It's something we can shift through breath, movement, focus, and language. We can recondition ourselves to access strength even in the face of fear. Another crucial part of this process is identifying the stories we tell ourselves. These stories create our identity. I'm shy. I'm just not creative. I always give up. These aren't facts. They're scripts, often written during moments of pain or failure. But just because a story feels true doesn't mean it is. When we begin to question these narratives, we create space for new ones to emerge. Identity is fluid, not fixed. We can choose to become someone new, someone who takes action despite fear, someone who speaks up, someone who leads, creates, and grows. This shift doesn't happen through logic alone. It takes emotional intensity, deep reflection, and often an experience that breaks us out of our routine. When we step into a powerful environment, physically or mentally, that forces us to confront our inner dialogue. We gain clarity. We realize we are not our past, not our failures, not our old beliefs. We are what we choose to become starting now. The development of a new mindset isn't just about changing what we think. It's about changing how we feel about ourselves. It's about aligning our thoughts, emotions, and actions with a vision of who we truly want to be. And that internal alignment, that's when real transformation begins. There was a moment in the experience where everything became still, not physically, but internally. It wasn't about the loud music, the crowd, or the exercises anymore. It was about one question that echoed through me like a lightning bolt. What if I've been wrong about who I am? That question shook the foundation of everything I thought I knew about myself. It exposed how tightly I'd been clinging to an identity built from fear, failure in the past. And for the first time, I could see that I didn't have to be that person anymore. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and visualized a version of myself free from those limiting beliefs. I saw someone who wasn't held back by doubts or insecurities, someone who showed up with confidence, clarity, and purpose. It wasn't a fantasy. It felt real. It felt possible. And then came the second question. What's it going to cost me to stay the same? That question pierced deeper than anything else. I thought of the relationships I had strained, the opportunities I had let slip by, the dreams I had put on hold, all because I hadn't believed in my own worth. Something clicked, not in my head, but in my body. I stood up, heart pounding, energy rushing through my chest. I wasn't just thinking differently. I was becoming someone new. I let out a yell, one I didn't know was inside me, as if I were shedding the skin of every doubt I had ever carried. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about finally freeing myself from the chains of my own story. That moment changed me. It was a raw, honest confrontation with the truth. I saw how long I had been waiting for permission to live fully, to dream unapologetically, to act boldly. And in that space, I realized that the only person who could ever give me that permission was me. The illusion of powerlessness shattered, and in its place stood something I hadn't felt in years. Certainty. Not the kind that comes from guarantees, but the kind that comes from knowing who you really are and finally choosing to live from that truth. It wasn't just a moment of emotion, it was a line in the sand, a point of no return. From that moment forward, everything changed, not because the world became easier, but because I did. Walking away from that experience, I carried something with me that I hadn't felt in a long time, a sense of alignment. Not just with my goals or ambitions, but with myself. For so long, I had been operating from a place of hesitation, second-guessing my instincts, waiting for the perfect conditions to begin living fully. But the truth is, life doesn't wait. It moves with or without us. The breakthrough wasn't about suddenly becoming someone new. It was about remembering who I've always had the potential to be and finally stepping into that space without apology. The transformation wasn't loud or flashy after the fact. It was quiet and steady. It showed up in the way I began to speak to myself, the way I approached challenges, the way I made decisions from a place of belief rather than fear. The inner shift led to outer results, but those results were just reflections of a deeper truth that everything I needed to change my life had always been within me. It just took the right mirror, the right questions, and the right moment of courage to see it. It's easy to fall back into old patterns. Life has a way of pulling us into comfort zones and convincing us to stay there. But once you've tasted that level of clarity and empowerment, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending you're powerless. The change might not happen overnight, but the decision to change does. And that decision, when made with total commitment, becomes the pivot point for everything that follows. Looking back, I realized the real gift wasn't the strategies or tools. It was the shift in mindset, the realization that our thoughts create our emotions drive our behavior, and our behavior shapes our destiny. That process begins with awareness and grows through repetition, focus, and aligned action. There's nothing mystical about it. It's raw, real, and entirely possible for anyone willing to look within. The journey to transformation starts when we stop blaming the world and start taking ownership of our inner world. That's where the real work is. And it's the most powerful, liberating work you'll ever do. Change your mind and you change your life. Choose a new story and you create a new future. The power isn't out there somewhere. It's been in you all along, waiting for you to claim it. If anything in this story stirred something in you, an ache, a longing, a spark, you owe it to yourself to follow that feeling. It's not just inspiration passing by, it's a signal, a reminder that there's more available to you than what you've been settling for. Too many people wait for the perfect moment, the right circumstances, or a sign from the world to make a move. But what if the sign is already here? What if the only thing missing is your decision to act? This isn't about waiting for confidence or clarity to magically appear. It's about deciding that your life is worth showing up for now, even with the uncertainty, even with the fear. Growth doesn't require perfection. It requires honesty and courage. The courage to admit where you've been playing small. The courage to challenge the beliefs that no longer serve you. The courage to step into discomfort long enough to discover what you're truly made of. Take one step today, just one. It might be journaling the stories you've been telling yourself. It might be joining a community of growth-minded individuals. It might be committing to a new habit that supports your highest vision. Whatever it is, do it with full presence. Don't let another week go by saying, someday. Life isn't waiting, and neither should you. Transformation doesn't come from passively consuming content. It comes from participation, from taking the leap into your own potential and refusing to shrink back. It's not about having all the answers. It's about being willing to ask better questions and trust that you're capable of figuring it out along the way. You don't need to become someone else. You need to remember who you really are beneath the fear, the doubt, and conditioning. That version of you, the bold, empowered, fully alive version, is already inside, waiting for permission to lead. Give it right now. The next chapter of your life is unwritten, and you hold the pen. Choose to write a story that reflects your truth, your strength, and your purpose. Start today. Start exactly where you are, and don't stop. Your future self is counting on you.